Nancy Gedeke, and I'm currently semi-retired. I've had my own business, but for the last several cycles, I've been an election worker. I came from Minnesota about 12 years ago, and so having worked up there more actively in politics, I'm always looking for organizations that support building a better world, and I think that Progress Texas is part of that.
It's Wednesday, January 8th, 2025, and this is the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch, rapid response on the breaking news stories Texas progressives need to know. I'm Chris Mosier. A great many of us, myself included personally, have either drastically scaled back our use of the platform that to me will always be called Twitter, or closed up shop there altogether, ostensibly out of the correct notion that your presence and activity there, no matter what you're doing, is generating revenue for its supervillain owner. That seemed like an easy call until yesterday's news that Meta /Facebook /Instagram /Threads has now taken a lurch towards the right and away from any valuation of truth. And part of that change includes, in particular, Texas. Pavanacharya at the Texas Tribune says Meta is planning to move its content moderation operations from California to Texas in order, quote, to reduce bias concerns, unquote, as CEO Mark Zuckerberg put it in a peculiar announcement video yesterday. It's both a little puzzling and somehow right on target for Texas to represent a physical geographic space in which the truth is easier to dispense with than other places. Surreal is a decent word, too, that's in clear jeopardy of overuse in the coming era. Meta's move to Texas is part of the dismantling of its third-party fact-checking efforts, shifting to a user-driven community notes model, much like that found on Twitter, and clearly working great over there. So why Texas? The Trib talked to Samuel Woolley, the founder and former director of propaganda research at UT Austin's Center for Media Engagement. He says the decision appears, quote, born out of some practicality and also some political motivation. The perception of California among those in the incoming administration is very different than their perception of Texas, unquote. In other words, it's a bow down to Donald Trump. Woolley expresses concern that removing fact-checking from Facebook, in particular, the world's largest social media platform, will, quote, remove one mechanism for supporting democracy on that platform, unquote, and clearly. Victoria Elliott at Wired reiterates that Zuckerberg didn't explain why people who live in Texas would somehow be less prone to bias than those who live in California, but that's perhaps more besides the point than our laws regarding online content here in the Lone Star State. Texas is one of two states, the other being Florida, with laws that essentially forbid moderation of a great deal of content on social media platforms. Not to mention a regulatory system that's exceptionally friendly to big companies and their eccentric billionaire owners. If there's a bright side to be found here in the new Trump era, even more Texans will be likely to find the courage to wear their true colors on their sleeves, making MAGA types easier to spot and to avoid. Right on cue from there, and making perfect sense really, a new story from the Dallas Observer, and writer Emma Ruby reminds us that Texas remains a national hotbed for hate-based anti-government extremism, with the latest data from the Southern Poverty Law Center counting nearly 100 groups dedicated to right-wing ugly who headquarter right here in Texas as of the end of 2023, with only California and Florida surpassing us. 18 of those Texas groups operate on a statewide basis. Other watchdogs are observing this rise of hate in our state. The Anti-Defamation League ranked Texas number one for white supremacist propaganda in 2023, noting that some of the hate groups projecting a large national presence also have deep roots here. Defining our terms, these watchdog groups define the term hate group as organizations set up to, quote, attack or malign an entire class of people, typically for their immutable characteristics, unquote, and anti-government groups as those who, quote, believe the federal government is tyrannical and traffic in conspiracy theories about an illegitimate government of leftist elites seeking a new world order, unquote. Over to immigration, where besides the human suffering and destroyed lives and families that Donald Trump's promised mass deportation sweep seems certain to cause across the United States, especially here in Texas, a close second concern has been how such a sweep would impact vast sectors of the American economy. With the election results landing the way they did, it would appear that only the business sector itself remains to make a stand for the people, the human beings who provide the lifeblood of those economic sectors, though any real organized pushback from business against Trump's plan is nowhere to be found just yet. A new Texas Tribune survey of South Texas business owners lays their concerns bare, with Texas likely to be center stage for the worst of it nationally. The Texas State Comptroller's Office, back in 2006, when it was led by Carol Stewart, Keaton, Strayhorn, Rylander, McClellan, did a study on the economic dependence of Texas upon undocumented labor, finding almost 2 decades ago that pulling that labor source out of play would cost the state almost $18 billion in gross state product. That's $2006, mind you. Any business dealing in agriculture, home building, hospitality, and on will be in big trouble, and disruptions in those industries will impact the tax bases of the cities they surround. Lots of small, red Texas towns are in for a hit. The Trib talked to one 43-year-old undocumented man who migrated to Texas 25 years ago as a teenager. Over that time, he's built a life and a family, a wife protected by DACA, and kids who are citizens by birthright. He says, quote, "I try to be a great citizen. Trump cannot deport everyone because there are so many of us who are indispensable to this country," unquote. It's heartbreaking, but this man and thousands like him should be preparing his family now for his own potential disappearance via deportation, especially those who live and work in Texas. Our funding at Progress Texas is rarely sufficient for us to plan much more than a quarter or two ahead, but the conservative disinformation machine we oppose has no such obstacle. They're funded by oil billionaires, tech billionaires, and religious right-wing activist groups. Our regular everyday listeners form a key component of our funding here at Progress Texas, so if that's you, we could use your support as a monthly contributor. No amount is too small. Go to progresstexas.org/donate. Thanks to Roxanne Boyd, Betty Ferguson, and Larry Russell, all of whom have done exactly that lately. We appreciate all of you very much. While you're at the website, hit our web store where you'll find Y'all Means All, Revolution, and our most popular Humans Against Ted Cruz t-shirts, all union printed right here in Texas, the merch to match your progressive values, all at progresstexas.org. That's the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch for this Wednesday, January 8, 2025. Links to all these original stories can be found in our show notes. Progress Texas is a nonprofit, rapid response media organization promoting progressive messages and actions. While campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media and action in the Lone Star State. I'm Chris Mosier. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.